Hello, it's Bhagavad Gita time, and we are just starting chapter 14, which is the profound knowledge of the three gunas. Krishna, the Blessed Lord, said, "Again, I shall teach you the transcendent knowledge, the highest of sciences, knowing which all meditators have gone from here to supreme adepthood." And hi, Ma. And hi, Scott. I didn't think how you wanted to be in this, Ma. Anyway, so resorting to this knowledge, reaching homogeneity with me. Hi, Jeff. There's Jeff. Reaching homogeneity with me, they are not born even at the new cycle of creation, nor do they suffer at dissolution. Having described the field of action and the knower of the field in the last chapter, Sri Krishna now leads Arjuna. Just listening today, says Ma. Good. Okie dokie. Well, type in something wise from time to time. Having described the field of action and the knower of the field. Hi, Rosalind. I'm going to get going here if Krishna now leads Arjuna beyond the spheres of the field so that he can attain supreme consciousness. Om Tat Sat, says Matri. All righty. Om Tat Sat. There's the profound wisdom. Thank you. The knowledge that fulfills the purpose of life and leads one to completeness is considered to be the highest knowledge. There are many steps to that supreme knowledge, the final stage of attainment being complete liberation. When the self is realized, the aspirant no longer fears birth or death. Here, Sri Krishna describes that state that is beyond life here and hereafter. He says that when the universe returns to its primordial state after its dissolution, there is manifestation again, but the realized being remains unaffected by both annihilation and manifestation. He is one with Atman and is not subject to change, death, and rebirth. He has reached a state of immortality that gives him freedom from all bondage. Let's hear it for the freedom. Okay. My Maya is the womb, yoni, identical with me, who am the great Brahman. Maya, sometimes Maya gets called illusion, the appearances. And here, note here that there's a beauty here that this illusion, this Maya is the ground, is the womb out of which everything is born. Boy, do we have some stuff here. I'll put this hello from Nellie, and there's a little free from Scott. But boy, look at this free from Ma. Boy, there is a free. I can't even say that. Free. There is a free. Boy. I impregnate that. From there the birth of all beings occur, O descendant of Bharata. When we read this thing about ignorance, avidya, and all. It can sound like a negative comment. Oh, it's an insult because I'm suffering from ignorance. No, that's not it. It's this Maya. It allows there to be a womb. It allows the forgetting of Brahman, the universal consciousness, the oneness. It allows the forgetting of that so that there can be a ground out of which can grow all of this tremendous diversity of the world. But on the journey inward, we see that this diversity in the world is all distractions. And so we want to go beyond the Maya, beyond the avidya, so that we can experience what? The self, the little thing there. Now, Maitreya's is much bigger than mine. And that is beyond all of that Maya. All the forms that arise in all the species, O son of Kunti, I, Brahman, am their seed-giving father, the great origin, the yoni. The seed giver. Notice that word, the seed giver. The Supreme Self, Swami Rama explains, the Supreme Self is self-existent and is the father or mother of all, and Prakriti is the mother of the entire universe. The Supreme Lord sows its seed in Prakriti, from which are born and arise all beings. Thus the whole universe manifests. Every aspirant should know and remember that his vessel of life contains the seed of the Supreme Lord. He is the child of the Lord, and just as a child, he only needs to allow the seed to grow so that he becomes the father. When the student becomes aware of this truth, that the supreme imperishable seed of eternal life is already within him, he makes sincere efforts to allow it to grow. Then he attains godhood. The human being eventually becomes divine. Why? Because he was all along. Wow. Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, these attributes, born of Prakriti, bind the immutable body bearer in the body, O mighty armed one. Of these, Sattva, illuminator and healthy because of its immaculateness, binds through the attraction of pleasure as well as the attraction of knowledge, O sinless one. Know Rajas to have the nature of attraction and color, producing craving and attachment. O son of Kunti, it binds the body bearer through attachment to action. Know Tamas to be born of ignorance, the stupefier of all body owners. O descendant of Bharata, it binds through negligence, sloth, and sleep. Sattva causes attachment to happiness, Rajas to action, O descendant of Bharata. Tamas, however, veiling knowledge, causes attachment to inattention. We do have attachment to inattention. Just think how much we look forward to having a nice sleep. We love being tamasic. All that we see here, there, and everywhere, all the objects of this universe have been manifested by the three gunas of Prakriti. With the help of these three gunas, Prakriti manifests the universe. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas are distinct, yet they function in coordination with one another. The Sattva guna is peaceful, calm, and serene. Rajas is active, sensual, and full of desires, attachments, and enjoyments. Tamas produces sloth, inertia, confusion, delusion, and ignorance. And so is it any wonder how common it is for one to say, oh, I'm confused by this and that and the other. The aspirant should always be vigilant, watching that tamas and rajas remain tamed with the help of sattva, so that he can continue on the path undisturbed and undistracted. In order to accomplish this, earnest effort should be made, and one should meditate regularly. When sattva is predominant, the aspirant remains serene and happy. Elevating thoughts dawn during that time. The sattva quality is full of delight, enlightening, and very helpful in maintaining mental and emotional equilibrium. Without it, psychosomatic imbalances that lead to various kinds of disorders occur. When the sattva quality is not predominant, one experiences a lack of calmness, happiness, and joy. The mind then remains in a state of turmoil, full of conflict and confusion. But when the sattva quality is cultivated by the aspirant, he remains in a state of perpetual joy. Rajas creates raga, attraction or attachment, and dvesha, aversion or hatred, toward the objects of the world. One whose life is controlled by rajas remains continually active, for he constantly pursues the objects of pleasure. He is never satisfied and is always seeking new sources of pleasure. That way of being can lead to hypertension and many other diseases, and does not allow the student to discipline and control himself. Often the student functions under the sway of unconscious habits of a rajasic nature and acts without knowing and understanding why he is doing so. Criminals, when interrogated, confess that they knew they should not have acted in the way that they did, but they committed their offenses out of habit. It is rajas that led them to act and to create a division within and without. So even when they know what to do, they cannot act on that knowledge. The conflict that is created within by rajas leads to serious crimes, and crime is a disease that needs to be treated. Because of mistakes in the social order, either at home or in school, many people do not get proper attention and education. As a result, they form habits that are injurious to themselves and others. Rajas can also be directed positively and can lead one to be creative and constructive. It is an active force, and if properly utilized, it can do tremendous good for both the individual and mankind. Important points. These rajas is not bad. Tamas is not bad. It goes off track. That's what causes trouble. Tamas is sloth and inertia. It produces ignorance and destroys the sense of discrimination. It creates delusion, and then one cannot decide things on time. Thus, it leads one to inaction. A lazy aspirant remains in a state of sleepiness and lethargy, and in such a state of mind, the aspirant goes through negative withdrawal. For him, life is full of gloom. He does not experience joy or delight. Such people become fat and flabby and are prone to disease. Tamas leads one to many illnesses. Tamasic people become passive and suffer from all the diseases related to passivity. They do not want to move. They remain in a semi-conscious state. They are controlled by negative emotions. They are depressed, dependent, and helpless. Life becomes burdensome for them. The entire universe is a drama enacted by the gunas. The three gunas exist in everything, including all human beings. They are the motivating force in the drama of life. Almost everywhere, one guna is predominant and the other two are relatively dormant. They are hardly ever in a state of equilibrium. Equilibrium is experienced only by those sadhakas who practice physical, mental, and spiritual discipline. Krishna goes on, overcoming rajas and tamas, sattva prevails, O descendant of Bharata. Rajas prevails, overcoming sattva and tamas. Similarly, tamas prevails, overcoming sattva and rajas. When the light of knowledge waxes in all the doors of this body, then one should know sattva to have increased. Greed, activity, the initiation of actions, absence of peace, competitiveness, these are born when rajas has increased, O bull among Bharatas. Absence of light, lack of initiative, inattention, as well as stupefaction, these are produced when tamas has increased, O prince of the Kurus. The qualities of sattva, rajas, and tamas dwell in every human mind. According to the circumstances, one is predominant and the other two are relatively inactive. When rajas and tamas remain latent, sattva predominates, and when sattva and rajas remain dormant, tamas comes to the fore. These strands of Prakriti constantly intervene in human life. When sattva guna enables the light of knowledge to dawn, one becomes a sage. When rajas predominates, the desire for enjoyment victimizes the human mind. One then loses all sense of discrimination and he gears his life toward the attainment of enjoyment. When both sattva and rajas remain latent, one goes to a state of pitifulness. He does nothing creative and thinks nothing useful. Some commentators and scholars say that one should constantly cultivate the sattva guna in order to attain a state of perfection, and others say one should have equilibrium and balance in the three qualities. There is yet another view that one should go beyond all three gunas. Actually, these are progressive steps in the inward journey toward perfection. In the beginning, the aspirant should not allow the tamasic quality to raise its head. He should prevent his mind from going to the grooves of negativity and passivity. Lack of confidence and the lack of success in life leads one to such a negative state. Note here that there really is a sequence being said here. One's approach says cultivate sattva guna, but we have not gone beyond the gunas. One says cultivate sattva, and in other words, we're developing a light, sweet, sometimes called spiritual personality. When I was first encountering this stuff, it was, 30, 40 years ago. I recall writing a paper for myself. I eventually threw it away because I thought I should not cling to this thing. And I entitled it, the spiritual persona, because at the time, it was a time when I was working in my graduate degree in transpersonal psychology, and I was around a lot of people who were developing a spiritual persona, working very, very hard at having a nice attitude and being sweet and kind and loving, but not in the context of transcending the personality. It's as if the goal was to develop a sweet, kind personality, and that's the end of the journey. That's not the end of the journey. What we actually are trying to do is go beyond the gunas and experience the Atman. This, the question mark here, this is beyond the gunas. All of this out here is gunas. So while we want to cultivate a sattvic personality in the conscious mind operating out in the world, while we want to do that, it is so that we can transcend all of the levels of gunas. So what Swamiji is explaining here about stages, he's really telling us something. It's very, very important. One of the biggest, subtlest traps we can run into is when you find that, wow, I'm developing a pretty nice personality. I'm a sweet, kind, loving, compassionate person. And then we can wonder sometimes, why do I still feel like crap? Because answer is because we have settled for that level of balance of the gunas. And we have overlooked that what we are trying to do is go beyond the gunas and have the indescribable experience, so to speak, experience of that which is totally beyond all manifestation and is the pure consciousness. Note that when we first started this chapter, we talked about Maya. It talked about Maya. And so once there's Maya, then there can be Prakriti and there can be manifestation out here in the world. But on the journey inward, we want to reverse that. We want to go beyond the Prakriti. So we need to balance the effect of the gunas, not so that that's an end unto itself, but so that we can go beyond the gunas and beyond Prakriti and experience the Atman, the Purusha, the Shakti that's one with Shiva, etc. Well, in the beginning, the aspirant should not allow the tamasic quality to raise its head. Don't be lazy. He should prevent his mind from going to the grooves of negativity and passivity. Don't go there, mind. Lack of confidence and lack of success in life lead one to such a negative state. In the next step, the student should learn not to waste his energy trying to attain the objects of pleasure. Does not mean don't enjoy life, but don't waste energy trying to attain those objects. There's a difference. It does not mean be miserable. It does not mean do not enjoy a good dosa. Raj is probably now on the road on his way to visit for a couple days and has promised to bring dosa dough and make dosas. So it does not mean, this comment does not mean that we should not enjoy dosas, but we should not be putting much energy into trying to attain the dosas. Raj did not tremendously go out of his way to consume energy. He did not have to quit his job, to go home to make dosas so he could bring dosa dough here. It does not mean that we cannot enjoy the dosas. So this is not about don't enjoy life. Very much enjoy, but do not waste energy trying to attain the objects of pleasure. Such activity robs one of his inner strength, which is the very basis of human advancement and unfoldment. We want to use that strength to awaken, not to gain money and fame and all that stuff. The student should abstain from activities that lead him to a preoccupation with sense enjoyment. And again, it doesn't say don't enjoy sense enjoyment. That's part of the enjoyment of being in the world. But the troublemaker is the preoccupation that leads to the sense enjoyment. When he is able to tame and keep tamas and rajas under control, he starts to cultivate the sattva quality, a delightful and joyous state of mind that leads one in the path of meditation and contemplation. Without going through the process and establishing sattva guna as the predominant current in one's life, meditation and contemplation remain mere techniques and have little value. Mere techniques are of little value. Probably more accurate to say no value. So we're trying to make the sattva guna predominant, and then we can do the meditation and contemplation. When one breathes primarily from the left nostril, tamas holds sway. When he breathes through the right nostril, a rajasic state is evident. And when the breath flows evenly through both nostrils, he is in a sattvic state. Now, to make this observation does not mean that you and I have to figure out how to live a life where 100% of the time sushumna is awakened and both are open. That's not it. There's times of rest where the one nostril is open. It's a time of rest. And the sattvic quality can still be there. And so then we have tamas in service of sattva. Excuse me. There are times, as we all know, that we need to be active in the world. This is rajas. And so the rajas can be in service of the sattva. To establish sattva guna, the aspirant learns to apply sushumna with the help of pranayama techniques and meditation. It's in which the mind and breath are well coordinated. Then both breaths begin flowing freely rather than one predominating over the other. In such a state, the mind experiences joy and likes to meditate instead of wanting to go out to the objects of the world. Sorry to say, it's very, very common to say, I'm having a problem with meditation because I'm undisciplined. How do I force myself to do these practices? Well, if we focus on these gunas and balancing the nostrils and sushumna, then the mind experiences joy. The mind experiencing joy is not what the goal of the dhyana, of the meditation is. You do the breath work, you do the sushumna so that the mind experiences joys and then likes to meditate instead of wanting to go to the objects of the world. The other approach is, I want to go to the objects of the world and I'm trying to suppress that or repress that, and it's disturbing my meditation. How do I get rid of those objects of the world? That's not it. It's backwards. Attain the state of mind of experiencing joy through sushumna, which has to do with the balancing of the gunas, and then the mind likes to meditate instead of getting up and going out and seeking the objects. The mind then prefers to go to the inner recesses where it finds more delight and attains a state of equilibrium. After cultivating sattva guna, notice we're still talking here, a sequence is going on. Swamiji is telling us a story. So is Krishna. After cultivating sattva guna, the student progresses to the final state. Then none of the gunas has any hold over him. When the student has realized the self, capital S self, the Atman, the Purusha, the question mark, there it is, nice and big for Matri.
It's 1:30.
When the student has realized the self, he has gone beyond all the gunas and nothing affects him. His vision remains unalloyed, untainted, and pure. Each commentator has his own viewpoint. Here, Sri Krishna teaches Arjuna to cultivate sattva and then to perform his actions selflessly. What Swami Rama pointed out to us is then let us go beyond the gunas. Not many people want to go beyond the gunas, but this is what we're talking about over and over and over again. So as we talk about it, then we ponder it, we contemplate on it, we talk about it some more, we do meditation, do contemplation, and gradually this sinks in. We realize, wow, maybe there's some possibility that even I can transcend the gunas of Prakriti. This is the message. When a body bearer comes to death during an increase of sattva, he then attains the immaculate worlds of those of high knowledge. Upon dying in rajas, one is born among those who are drawn to action. Similarly, dying in tamas, one is born among stupefied species. Those who have realized the self, says Swami Rama, who are in the self and who have become one with the self are never reborn. Those rare sages become inseparably one with the Supreme Self and are beyond the influence of the gunas. They have crossed the mire of delusion and maya. They are liberated forever. Footnote here, the one reason that one might keep doing something is in a spirit of service to other people. If one has experienced this level of awakening, says, wait a minute, what about all the other people? And so says, okay, I'll hang around to serve the others. If the sages who have cultivated sattva guna prefer to stay in the highest of heavenly states when they depart from this mortal world, they can do so. If they wish to be reborn, they take birth in the homes of wise parents. But those people who cast off their bodies under the predominance of rajas are reborn in the homes of those who are active in attaining worldly pleasures and the objects of the world. If tamas is predominant when one drops off the body, he is reborn in a dull, dumb, and desolate family, a family in which sloth and inertia rule. If any of us feel like we were born into a family of rajas or tamas, I would invite you to remember that look at the nature of what you're exploring. Look at the nature of this wisdom that we keep going through. You could not be doing that if you did not have some awareness of the sattva. We would not be together having these conversations over and over and over again. So if you happen to have come from any form of cultural or family or religious background that seems to be dominantly tamasic or rajasic, it doesn't matter. That's me speaking. Because look at what the conversations we are having, that you are involved in, that we are all involved in. The sattva is there, and the Atman is there beyond all the gunas. So it's easy to say, boy, look at the crap that I've gotten my life into, and so something must be wrong with me. No. The fruit of a meritorious act is sattvic and stainless, but the fruit of rajas is pain, and the fruit of tamas is ignorance. Knowledge is born from sattva and greed from rajas. Inattention and stupefaction as well as ignorance arise from tamas. The sattva dwellers rise upward. The rajasic remain in the middle. Tamasic ones remaining under the influence of base qualities move downward. And remember here in this sentence, this verse here, is talking about the predominance. When it says the sattvic dwellers, it's saying those who are predominantly sattva. Rajasic means those who are predominantly rajasic. Tamasic means those who are predominantly tamasic. And there's only one person who can decide which of those three orientations we are going to live. And that is that person that we all know as somebody called me. It's the only one that can do it. No other person can do it for us. How can one have a pleasant death and prepare himself for the life hereafter? Life is but a brief sentence, ending with a comma and no period. By analyzing life between the two commas of birth and death, the profound knowledge of the whole sentence is not grasped. The whole of life thus remains unknown. Death is a preparation for another birth, and death and birth are two transition points that mark the next step in the path of light. Life should be a preparation for the never-ending journey to the infinite. Those who perform good actions without attachment to the fruits of their actions are called sattvikas. Their actions and fruits are totally dedicated to the whole of mankind, and they are liberated from the bonds and ties of karma. I'll note here that says those actions, their actions and fruits are totally dedicated to the whole of mankind. Well, you and I may feel like, well, I'm not quite up to the level of totally. And let's go back to that word predominantly. If you note that you are more and more predominantly operating from sattva, and your actions are predominantly dedicated to others and predominantly and gradually towards the whole of mankind, starting with our own family and close friends, then the liberation comes. Even after dropping their mortal bodies, they are born again to perform more actions, for actions are like worship for them. They rejoice in being born again and again, to breathe an eternal prayer and to perform their actions skillfully and selflessly. Actions performed in such a way are sattvic and liberating, but those who perform actions with selfish motivation are rajasic, and their actions lead to pain. Such people presume that death is painful and remain tormented by the fear of death, and those who are tamasic remain in the darkness of ignorance, completely dependent on fate. Fate leads them to lowly rebirth. From sattva rises knowledge, from rajas desire is born, and from tamas comes ignorance. Those who have profound knowledge of sattva march upward toward the summit. Those who are rajasic can only go up so far and remain in the middle. Those who are tamasic are not aware of their path, their potentials, or the creative aspect of life. When the seer observes no agents of action other than the gunas and knows the transcendent beyond the gunas, he attains the state of being me. And note here as a reminder that this capital M, me, is Krishna speaking. Remember, we're looking at a story. We're looking at poetry. And Krishna is a symbol of Brahman, the absolute, infinite, non-dual reality consciousness. And so when it said he attains the state of being me, it means he attains the state of oneness with the infinite consciousness called Brahman. The body bearer, transcending these three body-creating gunas, freed from the sorrows called birth, old age, and death, enjoys immortality. The perfect seer, well established in the Supreme Self, knows that all the gunas create the play of the universe and that Atman is not the doer. Therefore, he does not become involved and entangled in the play of the gunas. He knows that the real self, capital S self, remains above the gunas, unaffected and untouched. The body functions because of the three gunas, but the sage is free from identification with body consciousness. Therefore, he is free from death, birth, old age, and misery. He has already attained immortality. Oh, my. Arjuna asked, With what characteristics is that one endowed who has transcended the three gunas, O Lord? What is his conduct? Having transcended the gunas, in what manner does he conduct himself? Now note here that what we're getting here is not a script so that we can become actors of this. We're not trying to pretend and become actors. This is giving us some idea of where we're going. Nellie says, remember. Yes, exactly. Remember. The Blessed Lord said, illumination, activity, as well as delusion, O Pandava. He is not adverse to these when they are operant, nor does he desire them when they have ceased. He's no longer seeking the illumination of sattva, the activity of rajas, nor is there delusion of tamas. He who sits in neutrality is not moved by the gunas. He observed merely that they operate with one another and does not respond. Now, the rest of us may not be perfect at this, but if we or as we practice our meditations and contemplations sincerely, we have moments, do we not, where you feel this sense of neutrality and you feel not moved by any of the three gunas. These are good signs. These are good reminders. Nellie says, remember, these are good reminders that we are making progress. Alike to pain and pleasure, self-dwelling, beholding a lump of clay, stone, and a nugget of gold as the same, holding the pleasant and unpleasant as equal, endowed with wisdom, alike to praise or censure, alike in honor and dishonor, equal to the friendly or the hostile sides, renouncing all endeavor, he is said to have transcended the gunas. Arjuna wants to know how to recognize one who has gone beyond the gunas, and he asks how such a person behaves. Sri Krishna says that sattva emanates light, rajas activity, and tamas delusion. And Scott throws in a vote of yes. Short and sweet, yes. In all conditions, whether he is a success or a failure, the person who is sattvic remains content. Finally, he goes beyond all the gunas. He remains aloof and unaffected in all situations. The rest of us get glimpses, but maybe are not quite up to it in all situations. But some is better than none. In the midst of the play of the gunas, he is neither inspired by sattva nor angered by the play of tamas. No matter what happens, he remains undisturbed, knowing that all the plays and melodramas are arranged by the gunas. He is not imbalanced in either gain or loss. Sattva does not imbalance him, and he is not affected by the grief and sorrow created by rajas and tamas. He maintains his evenness equally in honor and dishonor. Observing such signs and symptoms, the aspirant can identify one who has risen above the play of the gunas, whether completely or predominantly or partially or something like that. And he who serves me, again, this is Brahman, the infinite, and he who serves me with an undeviated yoga of devotion, fully transcending the gunas, he is fit to become Brahman, which of course he already is Brahman. Remember, we use language poetically that we're going to become Brahman. We already are Brahman. We already are Atman. We already are the question mark. But because of the gunas, because of the maya, because of the avidya, we have forgotten, and it has gotten veiled. I am the fundament of the immortal and immutable Brahman, of eternal law, dharma, and of ultimate happiness. To cross the mire of delusion created by the three gunas, the aspirant needs to have one-pointed devotion and complete dedication to the Supreme Lord alone. Without purification of mind, single-minded devotion is not possible. And without single-minded devotion, one is not able to attain the highest Brahman. The Supreme Lord is the final abode. He, there again, poetic choice of words. He is immortal and imperishable. He plans the eternal laws of Dharma. He is full of peace and bliss. Okay, there we go. Let's let Scott have the last word here and be free. How's that? This is the end of chapter 14. Next we will have chapter 15. What is chapter 15? Let us take a little. I'm going to give me a moment here. I'm going to show you. It just takes me a minute to get it up here. Chapter 15. It will be up momentarily. So rich, says Scott. Yes, absolutely, tremendously rich, huh? Okay, that was chapter 14. Next is chapter 15, and here we go. The eternal tree of life. That's what's next, the eternal tree of life. Okay, to be continued. Quite a journey, isn't it? Quite a journey. So thank you all for playing and visiting and hanging out. And remember, these gunas dominate our lives. We're all living in this constantly. And we try to reduce the tamas and reduce the rajas. And part of that reducing is to direct it wisely, cultivate the sattva. But then remember, ultimately we want them in equilibrium. And then we want to go beyond them. Okay, it's very, 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 very practical, this discussion of the gunas. It's very, to call it philosophy, is very high, profound philosophy. It is that. It is high, profound philosophy. But at the same time, it's not really philosophy at all. It's very, very, very practical, day to day, in the middle of life wisdom. Okay? So thank you all for playing. And there, let's let Scott have the last word again there with a nice resounding free. Okay? So it's Friday here. So Saturday is coming. We're together a few times on Saturday. All to be continued. Okay? Thanks for playing. It is love, says Nellie. Free is love. One of the words that goes for it that matches that. All righty. Bye-bye. To borrow from you friends who are Dutchies, dooey. And remember to find what you're looking for in the silence after the Om. Tat Sat. Om Tat Sat. Which Maitri started this with. So, okay. Bye-bye.